Here it is the specimen when the brain with the vessels could be seen. Now we can see the inferior surface of the brain. Here it is the brain stem, and this is cerebrum itself, inferior surface of temporal lobe and frontal lobe. And this is occipital lobe. So on the brain stem, we can distinguish the pons and the medulla oblongata. Here there are pedunculus cerebri, fossa interpeduncularis, and the place of chiasma opticum. Now, let's compare the scheme behind specimen and specimen itself. This is arteria basilaris. It is located on the pons and is result of joining these two vertebral arteries, arteria vertebralis dextra and sinistra. They form arteria basilaris. Here it is. Then arteria basilaris divides into main branches, arteria cerebri posterior. This branch in our specimen is here, arteria cerebri posterior. It goes to the inferior surface of the temporal lobe, and all these vessels are finishing branches of arteria cerebri posterior. This is circulus arteriosus cerebri, which is between two large arteries, arteria carotis interna dextra et sinistra. This is the place of when they cut after removing the brain from the skull. In our specimen, this place is here, place of cutting of arteria cerebri anterior. So this point is arteria carotis interna. From it, in the anterior direction, goes arteria cerebri anterior, this branch. On opposite side, here it is. And on the scheme, arteria cerebri anterior, arteria cerebri anterior. They communicate between each other with ramus communicans anterior, which isn't seen in our specimen. This is another large branch of arteria carotis interna, arteria cerebri media. In our scheme is here, arteria cerebri media. Arteria carotis interna prolongates into arteria cerebri media in this direction. Arteria cerebri media and anteria cerebri media from another side. Now we turn the specimen and demonstrate that arteria cerebri media is located between temporal lobe and frontal lobe. So it comes into this fissure, which called fissura lateralis. Fissura lateralis. When we open this fissure, we can see the branches of arteria cerebri media, which then finishing in the cortex of adjacent part of both lobes, temporal lobe, frontal lobe, and parietal lobe. Now I remove left lobe, and now we can see only right hemisphere of the cerebrum. So here it is, arteria cerebri anterior. It surrounds this structure. What is it? It's corpus callosum. This is septum pellucidum. This is diencephalon, and this is mesencephalon, pons and medulla. So arteria cerebri anterior surrounds the corpus callosum and gives multiple branches to cortex of medial surface of frontal lobe, of parietal lobe, and part of occipital lobe. And now let's find relationships between the cerebrum and cerebellum. I put cerebellum and its place. So here it is, inferior surface, and there invisible superior surface of cerebellum. Now let's find the main arteries for its vascularization. This is arteria vertebralis dextra and arteria vertebralis sinistra. Arteria vertebralis dextra and arteria vertebralis sinistra. From it originates arteria cerebellaris inferior posterior. Arteria cerebellaris inferior posterior. Here they are. And so here it is, arteria vertebralis dextra and arteria vertebralis sinistra before they form arteria basilaris. Arteria vertebralis dextra, arteria vertebralis sinistra, arteria basilaris. And both of them gives arteria cerebellaris inferior posterior. Arteria cerebellaris inferior posterior. Here it is. Arteria cerebellaris inferior posterior. Then we can find arteria cerebellaris inferior anterior, which originates from arteria basilaris. Arteria cerebellaris inferior anterior. It vascularizes anterior portion of inferior surface of cerebellum. And when we take off and turn the cerebellum, we can find arteria cerebelli superior. On our scheme, it is here, arteria cerebelli superior. To find this vessel, we should understand that arteria cerebelli superior is the last branch of arteria basilaris before it divides into arteria cerebri posterioris. Arteria basilaris divides here on anterior cerebri posterior sinistra and there dextra. So before them, this is arteria cerebri posterior and this is arteria cerebellaris superior. Arteria cerebellaris superior. They quite close to each other. And now I'd like to demonstrate that arteria carotis interna could be found here in two parts, on the basis of the cerebrum and here on the basis of skull. When we remove the brain from the skull, we need to cut this artery. So arteria carotis interna should be demonstrated here, and here it is the same vessel which was cut here. And on the skull, we can demonstrate the Turkish saddle, sella turcica. This is hypophyseal fossa hypophysealis, and sulcus chiasmatis. This is trigeminal nerve, first branch, nervus ophthalmicus, second branch, nervus maxillaris, and third branch, nervus mandibularis. Here it is the pyramis, anterior surface of pyramis and posterior surface. This is foramen acousticum internum, through which two nerves goes. One of it is nervus vestibulocochlearis and another nervus facialis. Then inferiorly we can find foramen jugularis, through which goes nervus glossopharyngeus and nervus vagus and nervus accessorius. And this is hypoglossal nerve, nervus hypoglossalis.